Rain tap, tap, taps on the high window, blurring the world outside into watery streaks of gray and silver. I float between sleep and waking, the beeping of monitors a persistent reminder that I'm alive, though barely. There's a sterile chill in this hospital room, the kind that seeps into your bones and makes you feel smaller with every hour that passes. My name is Marian Prescott. I'm 59 years old, a retired English teacher, and lately, a widow. That word still sits heavy in my mouth, unspoken most days, but always there, reminding me that I'm now the last page of a story that should have been written together. It's been almost a year since I lost Richard, my steady anchor in the chaos, and sometimes I wake up certain that he'll be sitting in the chair by the window, crossword in hand, reading glasses perched on the end of his nose. But it's always just the rain and the quiet hum of machines. After the accident, the fall in my old kitchen, a sharp slip on a loose tile, and a shattered hip that followed, I didn't have much choice but to move in with my son Jordan and his wife Paige. They made the offer, and I was too tired to protest. The thought of returning to an empty house with its echoing silence was worse than the prospect of imposing on a busy young family. So here I am, drifting in and out, wondering what kind of shape my life will take when I finally leave this bed. The nurse, a brisk woman with clipped words and a kind smile, checks my vitals for the third time this morning. "You'll be back on your feet in no time, Mrs. Prescott," she says. But I can tell she doesn't quite believe it. Neither do I. I watch her move around the room, straightening the sheets, scribbling something on my chart. I want to ask for more pain medication, but my mother's voice whispers from the back of my mind, "Don't be a bother, Marian." No one likes a complainer. The door swings open and Paige enters, umbrella dripping water onto the linoleum. She's dressed in a tailored gray coat, hair pulled back, makeup perfect even in the fluorescent hospital light. Her smile is wide, practiced. "How are you feeling?" she asks, voice as bright as her lipstick. I manage a small smile, tired, still a little foggy. Paige sets down a bag of groceries on the window ledge. She moves with efficiency, fruit, a few magazines, a new pair of slippers. "Jordan will be by this evening. He's been swamped at work. Wyatt made you a card." She passes it to me, and I run my fingers over the crayon drawing. Wyatt is 10, a sweet, quiet boy who spends more time with books than with people. In the picture, I'm sitting in a big chair, a blanket on my lap, while he stands nearby, a soccer ball under his arm. There's a dog in the corner, though we've never had a dog. I smile, heart aching for the simple way children see the world. "Thank you," I say softly. Paige glances at her watch. "Let me know if you need anything," she says, already halfway to the door. "I'll be back around dinner time." The room is quieter when she leaves, and I sink back into my pillow. I try not to dwell on the way her voice tightened just before she stepped out, or the way she always seems to be rushing away, never toward. When Richard was alive, visits were full of warmth and laughter. Now everything feels measured and efficient, as if I'm one more task to be managed. Later, as dusk settles in, Jordan arrives. He's always tired lately, dark circles under his eyes, phone buzzing in his pocket. He pulls up a chair beside my bed, but glances at his screen every few minutes. We make small talk, my recovery, his new project at work, the weather. But the conversation feels thinner than it used to. He promises to bring Wyatt tomorrow and hurries out, phone pressed to his ear. When I'm alone again, I listen to the rain and remember my own mother, her sharp voice, her rigid rules. She grew up in the Depression and never let anyone forget it. "Endure, Marian," she used to say, "and don't ever show weakness." I learned early to swallow pain, to keep my voice low, to disappear rather than draw attention. Old habits linger even now. I find myself apologizing for the extra work I create, for the space I take up, for needing help at all. The days slip by in a blur of rounds, medications, and fitful sleep. The hospital staff come and go, kind but impersonal. Paige's visits are routine, always the same polite smile, the same quick updates, the same slightly too cheerful tone. Jordan comes late, leaves early, always distracted. One night, near midnight, I wake to the sound of voices outside my door. The hall is quiet, but I recognize Paige's soft, urgent tone. "I know, but she's not ready yet," Paige whispers, her words sharp, just audible over the hum of the machines. "We have to wait until she's out of the hospital. Yes, I know what we agreed. I'm just saying, when the time comes, we'll do what we have to do."
There's a long pause. My heart hammers in my chest.
The nurse's footsteps echo down the hall, and the voices stop. I stare at the ceiling, wide awake, fear settling in my bones. Was I imagining it? Was Paige really talking about me? I want to believe it was nothing, just hospital paranoia, the fog of medication. But I can't shake the feeling that something is shifting, a current beneath the surface of this new life I've been forced into. In the morning, I look at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, pale, drawn, eyes ringed with fatigue. I practice a smile, try to make it look convincing. Paige arrives with Wyatt in tow, and for a moment, things almost feel normal. Wyatt sits on the edge of my bed, reading from a dog-eared copy of Charlotte's Web. Paige stands by the window, phone in hand, always half a step removed from the moment. When they leave, I stare at the closed door and wonder if I'm seeing ghosts where there are only shadows. But the echo of Paige's words lingers. When the time comes. The phrase loops in my mind, refusing to fade. As the rain starts up again and the hospital grows quiet, I close my eyes and listen for Richard's voice, for my mother's stern guidance, for some assurance that I'm not just imagining things. All I hear is the steady beeping of the monitor and the soft sound of rain. Steady, relentless, washing everything clean. I am alive, but for the first time, I wonder if survival is enough. Coming home from the hospital is supposed to feel like relief, a return to safety, to the familiar. But when Jordan pulls up to the curb, rain still fresh on the pavement, I only feel the weight of uncertainty. The front porch, once a place where Richard and I drank our coffee and watched the world change, looks smaller now, its welcome worn thin. Paige is waiting at the door, arms folded, her smile too tight. Inside, the house smells faintly of lemon cleaner and something scorched. My walker scrapes the tile in the hallway as Jordan helps me inside. Paige barely glances up from her phone. "Shoes off, please, Marian," she calls from the kitchen. "We just had the floors done." I shuffle to the living room, pausing to catch my breath. Every step is a reminder of what's changed. The ache in my hip, the tremor in my hands. Jordan lingers awkwardly, as if he can't quite decide whether to offer help or make a quick exit. "You'll feel better in no time," he says, dropping my bag beside the couch. Paige has everything set up. She's really been holding things together. I nod, forcing a grateful smile. "Thank you, sweetheart." But I see the relief in his eyes when Paige calls him from the kitchen. Meals are left on the counter for me now, always cold by the time I reach them. Toast with jam, dry chicken, limp broccoli. No one sits with me at lunch. The kitchen is Paige's domain, a place where I am a guest, never quite welcome. She hovers as I fumble with my plate, eyes darting to the crumbs I leave behind. The first week, Paige keeps her distance, politeness cloaked in precision. She leaves sticky notes on the fridge. "Don't forget your pills, Marian," and reminds me to keep the counters clean. She sighs when I leave a glass in the sink, her lips pressed thin. I apologize by reflex, hearing my mother's warning in my mind, "Don't give them reason to complain." Soon, Paige's patience thins. She starts assigning me chores, laundry, dusting, folding towels, jobs that leave me breathless but busy. "If you're going to stay with us," she says, "we need everyone to pitch in. We all have to adjust." When I fold a towel the wrong way, she unfolds it and does it herself, shaking her head. "You're slowing everyone down, Marian. We have a system." Jordan works late. At first, he promises to eat dinner with us, but his office calls stretch into evening. I wait for him, plate cooling on the counter, until Paige sighs and clears it away. One evening, I catch the end of a conversation as I round the hallway corner. Paige, voice low and sharp, whispering to Jordan in the mudroom. "She can't keep up, and you know it. She's barely getting around. This is our home, and we can't let her turn it upside down." Jordan mutters, "Paige means well, Mom. She's just stressed." He says this whenever I try to talk to him about the pain, the loneliness, the feeling of walking on eggshells. Paige is trying her best. Just give it time. I nod, hiding the sting in my chest. I'm used to making myself small, to shrinking away from conflict. At night, I lie awake in the guest room, once Wyatt's playroom, now stripped of toys and color. Shadows crawl across the walls, and I remember how my mother used to say, "You'll wear out your welcome if you're not careful, Marian. Don't let them see you as a burden." Wyatt, my sweet, gentle grandson, is quieter now. He stops by my room before bed, book clutched in his hands. Can you read to me, Grandma? Paige's voice echoes from the hallway. Wyatt, lights out. Let your grandmother rest. Sometimes I hear her sigh, impatient, tired, when Wyatt hugs me goodnight. Every morning, I find my medication bottle lighter than it should be. Once I ask Paige if she's seen my refill. She shrugs, not meeting my eyes. Maybe you're taking more than you remember. Age can do that. Her words sting, but I don't argue. I am afraid of being difficult, afraid of confirming her suspicions that I'm slipping. Some days the chores pile up, a list taped to the fridge with my name at the top. I try to keep up, but I drop things more often now. My hands ache. When Paige finds a stain on a pillowcase, she holds it up with a look of thinly veiled disappointment. We're not running a hotel, Marian. The house feels colder. Even Wyatt seems more withdrawn, his laughter fading as he spends more time in his room or at soccer practice. Paige keeps the schedule tight, ferrying him from school to piano lessons to bed with military precision. I watch from the window, remembering when Jordan was small and Richard would toss him in the air on summer nights, the whole world lit with fireflies and laughter. I try to tell myself this is just a rough patch, that I'll recover, that things will settle. But Paige's patience is wearing thin, and Jordan's absence grows longer. At dinner one night, I spill a little soup on the table. Paige snatches the napkin from my hand, her mouth pinched. Honestly, Marian, we can't keep cleaning up after you. I want to apologize, but the words catch. My mother's lessons echo again. Don't make waves, don't draw attention. I lower my eyes and nod. Flashbacks come at odd moments, scrubbing dishes as a girl while my mother watched for any mistake, every slip a mark against me. The sense of being a burden is as familiar as breathing. Even here in my own son's home, I feel it seeping into the corners, heavier every day. Late one evening, I go to the kitchen for water and pause in the darkened hallway. Voices drift from the back patio, Paige on the phone, the door open just a crack. I know, but we need to stick to the plan. She won't last much longer. She's already having trouble with the chores and Jordan's almost convinced. Just a little more time and we can move forward. My stomach twists. I stand frozen, hand on the wall, barely breathing. Who is she talking to? What plan? My mind races with possibilities, each more frightening than the last. I retreat silently to my room, pulse thundering in my ears. I sit on the bed, the room spinning, and try to steady my thoughts. Am I being paranoid? Is the pain and confusion making me see things that aren't there? But Paige's voice, those words, they echo with a certainty I can't dismiss. The house once meant to be my refuge feels like a labyrinth now, every hallway lined with doubts and shadows. I hug Wyatt's drawing to my chest, wishing Richard were here to tell me I'm not imagining things. The next morning, as I cross the living room, I catch Paige's eye. For a brief moment, something sharp flickers in her gaze before she turns away, her voice bright and brittle as glass. Did you finish the laundry, Marian? Don't forget to tidy up after breakfast. I nod, carrying my empty cup to the sink. Every gesture feels loaded, every word measured. The space I occupy grows smaller with each passing day. I wonder how long it will take before there's no room left for me at all. There are bruises you can show a doctor, and then there are the other kind, the quiet injuries that leave no mark except the slow erosion of certainty. My limp has eased, but I still wake to find my walker nudged inches out of reach, just enough to make the journey across the bedroom feel like a test. The first time it happens, I assume it's an accident. The third time, I wonder if I'm imagining things. I try not to mention it, but the doubt lingers. Some mornings I come downstairs and find my purse sitting open on the kitchen counter, keys tucked inside my shoes, a small pile of folded napkins in my coat pocket. My pill organizer is suddenly out of order, the compartments opened and closed at random. One afternoon, I reach for the sugar and realize the cabinets are locked with shiny new child-proof latches, none of which were there when I moved in. I hold the knob, frustration rising, and call out, Paige, do you know what happened to the kitchen cabinets? She steps in from the hallway, wiping her hands on a towel. Oh, I just thought it was safer, with Wyatt running around. You know how forgetful you can be about putting things back. Didn't want him getting into anything dangerous. The way she says it, soft, careful, with that little tilt of her head, makes it impossible to argue without sounding unreasonable. I nod, pretending it makes sense. I suppose that's wise, I say, swallowing the hurt. The small disorientations multiply. My slippers disappear from the foot of my bed and turn up under the couch. The laundry I folded is left unfolded on the table, as if someone is waiting for me to notice the mistake. Wyatt's art projects vanish from the fridge. The remote is hidden under a stack of cookbooks. I start keeping a list. One column for the things I know I've done, another for what I find undone. After a week, the lines blur. I begin to question myself. Did I leave the milk out? Did I forget to turn off the stove? Was I supposed to water the plants today? Or was that yesterday? Each slip becomes a small confession, a piece of evidence against my own mind. Paige's concern grows sharper, edged with a kind of weary patience. Marian, I know recovery is hard, but you really need to pay attention. Wyatt found your medication on the counter this morning. We can't be too careful. I glance at Wyatt, who sits quietly at the table, eyes fixed on a spot in the grain of the wood. He doesn't look up. Once he would have run to me with every scrape, every story from school. Now he's careful, polite, distant. Paige hovers, a shadow between us. That evening, after a dinner filled with silences and the clatter of silverware, Jordan comes in late. He loosens his tie, rubs his temples, and sinks into the nearest chair. The smell of coffee hangs in the air, acrid and cold. Paige gives him a quick summary of the day. Marian had a little trouble with the washing machine again. Wyatt almost missed the bus because we were looking for his backpack. I'm doing my best, but it's a lot for one person. Her tone is reasonable, but each detail is weighted. I wait for Jordan to say something, anything to defend me, or at least to ask for my side. Instead, he sighs, looking at me as if I'm another problem to solve. Can't you just try a little harder to get along? His voice is tight, tired. Paige is handling so much. The words sting. I want to tell him about the walker, the cabinets, the way my life feels like it's slipping through my hands. But instead, I hear my mother's mantra. If you complain, people will think you're weak. So I nod, swallowing the protest. I'll try. Wyatt slips away from the table, books in hand. I watch his small shoulders hunch as he disappears up the stairs, my heart breaking at how quickly he's learned to stay out of sight. After everyone goes to bed, I sit at my borrowed desk and open my journal. I write down everything, what I did, what I didn't, what I can't remember. I write to Richard, as if he's still listening. I'm scared I'm becoming the kind of person everyone warned me about, the kind who can't be trusted. I can't tell if I'm making mistakes or if someone is making them for me, maybe both. The pen trembles in my hand. I think of the old stories I used to teach, heroes lost in a maze, searching for a thread to guide them out. But here, the walls keep shifting, the doors keep disappearing. In the morning, the rituals repeat. The kitchen smells of toast, burnt at the edges. Paige stands by the window, coffee in hand, watching the driveway. I ask if Wyatt has time for a walk with me after school, and she shakes her head, not meeting my gaze. He's got soccer, maybe another time. When I check my phone later, the calendar has changed. Appointments shifted, reminders deleted. I ask Jordan about it that night, and he shrugs. You probably just forgot to save it, Mom. I retreat to my room, feeling the old panic rise in my throat. I double-check the lock on my door, even though I know it's never been used. I arrange my shoes, my robe, my pillbox, everything in perfect order, hoping it will stay that way come morning. Sometimes, in the quiet before sleep, I think of my mother, her hands quick and certain, her face set in lines of disappointment. Be useful, Marian. Don't let anyone have reason to complain. I try so hard, but every effort seems to prove I'm failing. The guilt settles in my bones. One night, as I finish writing, I look up and see my walker moved again, closer to the window this time, just far enough to make me hesitate. I close my journal and set it beneath my pillow. I promise myself I will remember, but I can already feel the memory slipping. I whisper into the dark, Richard, if you're listening, send me a sign. I'm lost. But all I hear is the low hum of the house, the steady tick of the clock, and the weight of doubts that no one else can see. Wyatt comes to me late one afternoon, quiet as ever, holding a battered library book to his chest. Paige's voice drifts from the kitchen, sharp and busy with the sound of dishes. But Wyatt's eyes find mine, and he slips into my room, shutting the door behind him. He sits cross-legged on the carpet, picking at the edge of his sock. "Grandma," he asks, his voice low, "were you ever scared to make mistakes when you were my age?" The question nearly undoes me. I brush a strand of hair from his forehead and study his small, serious face. For a moment, I'm not in this room at all. I'm in my childhood kitchen, a storm of smells and shadows and the ever-present ticking of my mother's clock. I was a clumsy child, always dropping things, always feeling too loud, too much. My mother, Eleanor, never yelled, but disappointment seemed to hang in the air like perfume. Her love was a thin, hard line you had to walk straight and narrow. Girls like us don't get second chances, Marian. One mistake, and people remember it forever. I clear my throat. I was scared all the time, Wyatt. My mother believed that if you weren't perfect, you didn't belong. She thought being strict would make me strong, but mostly, it just made me scared. He looks at me, confusion and relief mixing on his face. "I don't like when Mom gets mad at you, or at me." I want to wrap him up, to tell him he'll never have to feel this way, but I can't promise what isn't mine to give. Instead, I tell him, "It isn't your fault. Sometimes grown-ups forget how to be gentle." We sit in silence, the two of us, the late afternoon sun painting the wall gold. But beneath the warmth, old memories swirl. I remember scrubbing floors until my knees ached, standing silent at the dinner table, desperate not to spill or stumble. Every slip-up was recorded, tallied, remembered. "Some people never learn, do they?" my mother would mutter, not quite under her breath. The words ring in my ears even now. Dinner that night is a powder keg. The table is set perfectly, forks lined up, glasses sparkling under the light. Paige is all tight smiles and brisk movements, directing Wyatt to set out napkins, reminding Jordan about his phone calls. I move carefully, determined not to disturb the balance. But as I pass the green beans, my sleeve catches the edge of a plate. It tips, crashes, shards of porcelain skipping across the floor. The silence is immediate and total. Paige's face goes red. Her voice, when it comes, is sharp enough to cut glass. "Really, Marian? Can we not have one meal without an incident?" Jordan sighs, pinching the bridge of his nose. Wyatt's eyes fill with tears. I want to apologize, to make myself small, but the old fear is suddenly joined by something else, a raw, stubborn anger. Why should one broken plate matter this much? Why must every accident be a referendum on my worth? Paige isn't finished. She pushes her chair back, scooping up the broken pieces with exaggerated care. "Some people never learn, do they?" she says, each word dripping with contempt. The phrase stings. My mother's voice, now Paige's, the same old poison recycled. Wyatt starts to cry, the small, hiccuping sobs of someone trying not to be noticed. Paige ignores him, dropping the last of the shards in the trash. "Wyatt, go wash your hands. Dinner's over." He flees the table, and the silence that follows is suffocating. I stare at my lap, fists clenched. Jordan starts to say something, but Paige cuts him off. "If you're not going to help, just stay out of it." As the kitchen empties, I move slowly, cleaning up what's left of the meal. Alone, I let the tears come, silent and hot, sliding down my cheeks as I wipe the counter for the third time. I see myself in Paige, her need for control, her sharp edges, her hunger for approval. I see myself in Wyatt, too, shrinking, trying not to make noise, learning early that perfection is the price of love. I realize with a sick kind of certainty that the cycle has not broken. It simply changed hands. My mother wounded me. I passed the wounds on to Jordan in ways I didn't see, and now Paige, herself a product of some other hard home, carries them forward to Wyatt. We are links in a chain forged by disappointment and silence. That night, I cannot sleep. I take out my journal, writing until my hand cramps. I try to trace the path of hurt through my family, searching for a way out. "How do you stop being the thing you hated most?" I ask Richard in the pages, desperate for an answer. "How do you keep from becoming your mother, your tormentor, your jailer?" The house is quiet. I wander to the den, searching for something. Comfort, maybe, or just proof that I'm still real. In the back of a dusty drawer, I find a stack of old letters tied with twine. Most are addressed to Jordan, but one, yellowed and slightly torn, bears my name in Richard's careful hand. I untie the knot, heart hammering, and read,
Marian, if you're reading.
It means I'm not there to protect you anymore. I tried to warn you about Paige, but you always wanted to believe the best in people. If things ever feel wrong, if you start to question yourself, look in my study, bottom drawer. There are documents there and a recording. I hope you never need them, but if you do, trust yourself. Don't let them take your spirit. I love you, always. Richard. My hands shake. For months I've felt like I was losing my mind, unsure what was real. Now Richard's voice pulls me back, solid, grounding. He saw something in Paige I refused to see, and he left me a way out. Secret evidence, he said. A recording, documents. Was it possible he had known how things would unravel? A rush of hope rises in my chest, edged with grief. If Richard left something for me, then I am not alone in this. Someone believed me. Someone saw what I couldn't say. For the first time in weeks, I sleep. Uneasily, but with a glimmer of resolve. In the morning, as I sit across from Paige and Jordan at breakfast, I watch them with new eyes. Paige is quick with her reminders, Jordan is quiet as ever, but the balance has shifted inside me. The chain of pain is long, but not unbreakable. Maybe Richard has handed me the key. Maybe I can be the one to stop the pattern. And as Wyatt sits beside me, eyes wary but hopeful, I make a silent promise. I will find whatever Richard left behind. I will not let my grandson grow up believing love is earned through perfection or silence. The cycle stops here. Marian moved through the living room with a cautious, almost invisible grace, clutching a mug of chamomile tea between trembling fingers. The conversation was easy and shallow, the air scented with laughter and wine, until it fractured on the edge of a small, accidental calamity. One misplaced mug, her mug, slipped from Marian's hand, landing with a sharp clatter and a splatter of tea across Paige's white tablecloth. For an agonizing moment, there was only silence and the slow spread of amber liquid. Paige's eyes cut toward her, a blade behind a brittle smile. "Of course," she said, her tone clipped and rising. "It's always something, isn't it, Marian?" The circle of friends, tight and eager for entertainment, let out soft, uncertain laughs. Marian bent to blot the spill with a napkin, cheeks burning, hands fumbling with age and embarrassment. But Paige wasn't finished. She seized the opportunity, her voice sharpening, commanding attention. "I just bought that tablecloth, but why should you care? You don't pay for these things, you just—" She stopped, but the implication hung in the air, thick and choking. Jordan, arms crossed, watched impassively from his seat. Marian looked for Wyatt, but he was pressed into the far corner, surrounded by the others, his mouth tight and uncertain. The laughter grew, edged with meanness. Paige continued, each word a lash. "It's always an accident, always some mess. At what point do we stop pretending this is normal?" She gestured, inviting everyone to share the spectacle. "You know, when my mother started doing things like this, we realized it was time for her to get help." A tense silence followed, punctuated only by the sound of Marian dabbing the stain, each blot a futile act of apology. Marian wished for invisibility, to melt into the floor, to escape the scrutiny of these younger, impatient faces. But Paige leaned in, her voice dropping to a stage whisper that nevertheless carried through the room. "Maybe it's time you considered somewhere more suitable, Marian. Somewhere that can help, for everyone's sake." Marian's breath hitched. The humiliation was a slow burn, seeping into her bones. Jordan finally spoke, his words measured but unmistakable in their resolve. "She's right, you know. This isn't working, Marian. It's not safe for you to be here anymore, and it isn't fair to us. Maybe a home. Just think about it for everyone's sake." The words, so final and cold, left no space for Marian to defend herself. She looked to Wyatt, desperate, pleading, but he only shook his head, brow furrowed. "That's not fair, Paige. You know she's doing her best," Wyatt said, his voice small in the vast space Paige's accusation had opened. But Paige's hand curled tightly around his arm, pulling him away from Marian. "Don't, Wyatt. Don't make this harder. We all know it's time. Stop pretending." The group watched, awkward and silent, as Marian knelt on the floor, still pressing futilely at the stain, her fingers numb and shaking. The rain had begun to patter harder against the windows, streaking down the glass in long, broken lines, mirroring the feeling that ran through Marian. A sense of being erased, of belonging nowhere. Dinner carried on as if nothing had happened, but Marian barely registered the conversation, the laughter, the clink of silverware. Every glance slid past her or landed and quickly skittered away. She was invisible now, yet exposed in the harshest light, a mistake on the periphery of their well-ordered lives. After the guests left, Marian lingered in the empty kitchen, listening to the echo of their retreating footsteps. Her hands shook as she rinsed her mug and set it quietly on the drying rack, every movement careful, measured, as if the world would shatter at the wrong touch. Upstairs, Paige's words replayed, relentless in her mind. "It's time to stop pretending you belong here." She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the pale blue suitcase she'd used when she first moved in. Back then, it had been a symbol of hope, of a new beginning. Now, it was just another reminder of transience, of how quickly welcome could curdle into tolerance, and tolerance into rejection. With slow, deliberate motions, Marian began to pack. A sweater, a book, her old rosary, each item folded with care and a silent farewell. She paused by the window, watching the rain trace uncertain paths down the glass, feeling the world's cold indifference pressing in on her. There was no anger, only a vast, echoing loneliness that stretched in every direction. She heard the distant murmur of voices downstairs, Paige and Jordan discussing logistics, plans, her future as if she were a problem to be solved. She pressed her forehead against the window, letting the chill anchor her to the present moment. A soft knock at the door startled her. Wyatt entered, hesitating in the doorway. "You don't have to go," he whispered, but his words were hollow. Even he, kind as he tried to be, was powerless against the momentum Paige and Jordan had set in motion. Marian tried to smile, but it crumbled. "It's all right, Wyatt. I don't want to be a burden." He looked as if he might say more, but Paige's voice echoed up the stairs, cold and final. "It's time to stop pretending you belong here." Wyatt stepped back, closing the door softly behind him. Marian finished packing in silence. She took one last look at the room, at the pale, trembling light of the rain, at the life she had tried so desperately to maintain. Every corner seemed to whisper her failure. Each picture on the wall, each carefully folded blanket, all reminders of a home she could never quite claim. As she zipped her suitcase, a single tear slipped down her cheek, mingling with the rain on the glass. Alone, unmoored, Marian faced the darkness of the hallway and stepped forward, carrying nothing but her memories and a hope that somewhere, somehow, she might find a place where she belonged. Marian had never imagined her life would shrink to the inside of a battered sedan, the windshield fogged by her own shallow breaths, a suitcase wedged on the back seat. The world beyond the glass looked foreign. Silent trees bent in the wind, a city park slumbering under low clouds, the hush of morning broken only by the distant hum of traffic. The rain from the night before had faded, but its chill lingered in the air, seeping into the upholstery and through her thin blanket. Clutching her husband's letter to her chest, Marian let the words anchor her, as they had every night since she left. The paper, worn soft by her fingers, carried the last traces of his voice. She unfolded it, reading the familiar script by the pale light of dawn. Even as the meaning unraveled in her mind, there was something deeper, a promise she couldn't quite decipher. She pressed it close, as if the warmth of her hope might bring him back. The park was her refuge now. Each morning she watched the sunrise, its tentative beams stretching across the river, gilding the water and the world in gold. She would sit on a bench with her journal, writing in looping script about what she had lost and what she hoped to find. Sometimes her words spilled onto the page in tears, anger, shame, longing for forgiveness, but sometimes hope peeked through the lines, stubborn and bright. Her days blurred with uncertainty. She avoided crowded shelters, preferring the fragile safety of her car and the anonymous comfort of the park. In the evenings, she watched other wanderers drift among the benches, a man feeding pigeons, a couple arguing under the old oak tree, an older woman in a navy windbreaker moving purposefully from her van to a portable stove. It was this woman, Ruth, who would change everything. Ruth was 70, her hair cropped short, skin sunbrowned and crinkled around the eyes. She drove a dented white van, parked beneath a sycamore whose roots buckled the sidewalk. On Marian's second night in the lot, Ruth rapped gently on her window, holding out a steaming thermos and a battered tin cup. "You look cold," Ruth said, voice raspy with years and kindness. "I made too much soup." For a moment, Marian hesitated, pride and shame warring within her. But hunger and loneliness won. She rolled down the window and accepted the offering. The soup was thick and salty, with beans and a hint of something herbal. "Thank you," Marian whispered, embarrassed by the quiver in her voice. Ruth leaned against the car, the two of them watching dusk settle. "You're new to this, aren't you?" Marian managed a nod. "How can you tell?" "Your eyes," Ruth said softly. "You still expect someone to call you home." They sat in silence, the camaraderie of the displaced settling between them. Later, Ruth invited Marian to sit by her van's folding table, offering crackers and another cup of soup. They swapped stories in fragments: Ruth's years as a nurse, Marian's life as a wife, mother, caretaker. Ruth's husband had died 5 years before, cancer stealing him away piece by piece. Since then, Ruth had chosen the road, chasing freedom and peace, refusing to be caged by anyone else's rules. Marian listened, grateful for Ruth's company, her gentle advice. The old woman was blunt, but not unkind. "Sometimes the only way to save yourself is to walk away," Ruth said one night as they watched the stars blink on above the city. "People talk about sacrifice like it's noble, but all too often it's just another word for letting yourself be used up." The word struck Marian like a revelation. She had spent decades yielding, first to her father, then to her husband, and finally to her children, never questioning the weight she carried or the worth she surrendered. She saw it now in every memory: the way she apologized for her own presence, how she quieted her opinions, deferred to others' desires, dismissed her own pain. It wasn't just Paige's cruelty that had brought her here, but a lifetime of lessons learned too well. Keep quiet, don't complain, be grateful for scraps. Journaling by the river at sunrise became her ritual. She poured her regrets onto the page, resentment at the years lost to someone else's vision, bitterness at the internal voice that had always told her she wasn't enough, wasn't worthy. But with each day, her entries grew more hopeful. The river, patient and relentless, reminded her that even after storms, water found a way forward. The sun always rose, even after the darkest night. One morning, as golden light spread across the water, Marian pulled out her husband's letter, reading it for what felt like the 100th time. She traced his careful handwriting, feeling the ache of absence. This time, though, something shifted. She noticed a line she had missed before: "If you ever doubt yourself, follow the music. You'll find the truth, and you'll know what to do." Marian's heart quickened. She remembered how he always hid surprises for her, his love for puzzles and secret messages. Fumbling through the envelope, she discovered a second slip of paper wedged between the folds. On it was a list of numbers, a code, or perhaps a locker combination. Beneath it, a note: "Look in the piano bench at home, for you." The realization struck her like a bolt. Despite the pain of her exile, her husband had left her something. She needed to find it. But how? She confided in Ruth, whose sharp eyes widened with understanding. "Don't wait," Ruth urged. "If she's scheming, she's counting on you to disappear. Go back, get what's yours." Marian nodded, hope swelling in her chest. With Ruth's encouragement, she sketched out a plan. She would return, quietly, and check the old piano bench. There, she might find the evidence: her husband's secret recording, legal documents, perhaps the leverage she needed to expose Paige's plan and reclaim her dignity. As Marian watched the sunrise that morning, the river shimmering with possibility, she felt something she hadn't felt in months: a fragile, cautious hope. Maybe she had lost her home, but she had not lost herself. With Ruth's friendship and her husband's message guiding her, she could see a new path unfolding, one where she was no longer invisible or voiceless. For the first time in a long while, Marian believed she might truly find her way back. Marian barely slept. Every sound outside Ruth's van, the crunch of gravel, the distant rumble of garbage trucks, the sharp call of a morning bird, sent fresh waves of nerves through her chest. The letter, the code, the promise of something hidden had sparked hope. But hope came with fear. What if she was wrong? What if there was nothing at all? Ruth was already up, boiling water on a small camp stove. "Big day?" she asked, catching the tension in Marian's hunched shoulders. Marian nodded, sipping weak, instant coffee. I need to call someone. My husband's lawyer, Aaron Lowe. He's the only one who ever really looked me in the eye. Ruth handed over her phone without hesitation. No sense waiting around for fate to come knocking, she said. Marian managed a shaky smile, grateful for this woman's unvarnished support. She dialed Aaron's office, the number as familiar as a memory. The receptionist recognized her name. In minutes, Aaron himself was on the line, his voice carrying a blend of concern and quiet authority. Marian, it's good to hear from you. Are you safe? I think so, she whispered, glancing at Ruth for courage. I found something, a note from my husband. He said there's a recording, something about Paige, a trust. Aaron's tone sharpened. Where are you? Can you come in? The law office stood downtown, just off a busy avenue. Ruth insisted on driving Marian herself, the battered van rattling with each bump. Marian kept her husband's letter tucked in her coat pocket, her hands twisting the fabric as they sped past the city's glass towers and the memory-stained streets she used to know. Aaron met them in the lobby, looking older but still the same. Tall, spare, glasses perched low on his nose. He ushered them into his office, closing the door against the city's noise. Tell me everything, he said, and Marian did, her voice halting at first, then steadier as Ruth nodded along, her presence a silent anchor. She showed Aaron the letter, the code, explained the piano bench. He listened without interruption, his expression grave. When she finished, Aaron stood, unlocking a file cabinet behind his desk. He pulled out a plain manila envelope, sealed and bearing her husband's looping script. Your husband left this with me just in case, he said quietly. I never imagined it would come to this, Marian. Her hands shook as she broke the seal. Inside was an old voice recorder and a slim folder stuffed with papers. The recorder felt heavy, weightier than anything she'd ever held, the sum of secrets and trust and years of silent anxiety. She pressed the button, and for a moment, the static hissed. Then her husband's voice filled the room, strong but weary, carrying the echoes of everything they'd shared and lost. Marian, if you're hearing this, it means something has gone wrong. Paige, she's not who you think. I'm so sorry I didn't tell you sooner, but I wanted to believe the best. She's been planning this for years, ever since the diagnosis. She's spoken with lawyers, none I trust. She means to have you declared incompetent. She wants the house, the trust, everything. But I didn't let her. I created a separate trust, in your name, outside her reach. Aaron has the details. If Paige tries anything, use what's in this envelope. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you myself. You deserve better. You always did. The words hung in the air, each syllable a bittersweet knife. Marian felt her chest clench, her throat tighten. Tears slipped silently down her cheeks. Her husband had known. He'd tried, in his own secret, stumbling way, to shield her from the storm. But he'd also trusted her to carry on alone. She looked at Ruth, whose eyes glistened with silent solidarity, and then at Aaron, whose steady hands offered her the folder of legal documents. Inside, Marian found the proof, a legal trust, separate and airtight, placing the house and all remaining assets solely in her name. There were letters from her husband, dates and statements, instructions for what to do next. There were even copies of conversations Paige had recorded, attempting to frame Marian as forgetful, unstable, incapable. Marian's hands trembled as she sifted through the evidence, her husband's voice still echoing in her mind. For the first time since he died, she felt not abandoned, but protected. Not powerless, but chosen. Aaron's voice cut through the storm of her emotions. This evidence could change everything. Are you ready to fight? Marian wiped her eyes, breathing slow and deep. I think I am, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. I don't want revenge. I just want my life back. I want the truth to matter. Aaron nodded, his gaze gentle but resolute. We can do this, Marian. But you need to be prepared. Paige won't take this lying down. She'll fight you. She'll try to twist the truth. Ruth leaned forward, squeezing Marian's hand. You're not alone anymore. Let her try. Aaron outlined the steps. File for an injunction, freeze the accounts, present the evidence to the court. The folder held everything they needed. Proof of Paige's manipulation, her false statements to family and friends, the trust documents that legally safeguarded Marian's rights. It would be a battle, but it was one Marian no longer had to face alone. They left the office with a plan. Ruth drove Marian back to the park, the morning now bright and clear. They sat together by the river, letting the sunlight warm their faces, both women silent, processing the day's weight and promise. That night, in the quiet of her car, Marian replayed her husband's message. She let herself feel everything: grief, gratitude, anger, hope. For so long, she had believed herself at the mercy of others, shaped by their wants and disappointments. Now, she saw her strength mirrored in the love her husband had left behind, in the fierce loyalty of her new friend, in the possibility of justice. As darkness fell, Marian pulled out her journal and wrote, her hand no longer trembling but steady. Sure. The truth had been hidden, but now it was hers. She was ready, at last, to claim her life. The women's shelter was nothing like Marian had feared. She had expected cinder block walls, flickering fluorescent lights, and the chill of defeat clinging to every surface. Instead, she found warmth. Soft blankets stacked in the common room, sun streaming through tall windows, and a constant, comforting hum of voices in the background. The building was old but cared for, filled with the energy of dozens of women in flux, some fearful, some angry, some simply weary, all quietly rebuilding. Here, Marian was just another story beginning again. Her first night at the shelter was sleepless. She lay beneath a borrowed quilt, replaying Aaron's words, her husband's recording, and Ruth's quiet encouragement. She felt both powerful and terrified. There was something intoxicating in having evidence, in holding the truth so close, but the risks pressed on her chest with every shallow breath. Paige was dangerous in her self-righteousness. Jordan's complicity, passive but sharp-edged, haunted Marian's dreams. The morning after, she was introduced to Gwen, a therapist with laughing eyes, a cascade of silver hair, and a voice like polished wood. Gwen was gentle but unyielding, probing Marian's story with the careful curiosity of someone who had heard hundreds, but never tired of the telling. "I'm not sure what I'm doing here," Marian confessed, her voice brittle. "I don't want to run. I want to fight. But I've never fought before." Gwen smiled, leaning forward. "Sometimes fighting is just telling the truth when everyone else demands silence. This is your story now, Marian. Own every chapter." Nadine, the shelter's social worker, was practical and fierce. She moved through the shelter with a notepad tucked beneath her arm and a half-dozen pens wedged behind her ear. Nadine helped Marian sort through paperwork, explained her rights, and offered resources. A lawyer referral here, a financial advisor there, all with brisk efficiency and genuine warmth. One afternoon, Nadine sat with Marian by a window overlooking the garden. "You have evidence, support, and a safe place here. But you can't stay hidden forever. What's your next step?" Marian stared at her hands, feeling the weight of the recorder in her pocket. She thought of Paige's cruelty, Jordan's cold logic, Wyatt's fading attempts at kindness. "I need to confront them. I need them to hear me, not as someone who's broken, but as someone who's finally whole." Nadine nodded. "We'll back you up, but it has to be on your terms. You decide when and how." Marian spent her days preparing. In the quiet moments between chores and counseling sessions, she scribbled notes for her speech, rewriting and discarding dozens of drafts. She walked the garden paths at dawn, rehearsing words under her breath, each sentence shaping her resolve. Ruth visited twice a week, bringing soup and stories, and always a listening ear. Gwen met her in the empty common room after dinner, encouraging her to read her speech aloud. The first time Marian tried, her voice faltered, the old shame clinging to her tongue. She stumbled over the words, doubting her right to even speak them. Gwen never interrupted. When Marian finished, breathless and close to tears, Gwen only smiled and offered gentle applause. "Again," she said, "and again, until you believe every word." Ruth was tougher. "You've survived worse than their judgment. Don't let them see you flinch." Together, the three women became Marian's fortress. They rehearsed every possible outcome: Paige's rage, Jordan's disbelief, Wyatt's silence. Gwen asked, "What will you do if they interrupt? If they deny everything?" Marian practiced standing her ground, breathing through the fear, repeating her lines until they felt like armor instead of apology. Each night, Marian added to her journal memories of the past, hopes for the future, new words of courage scrawled in shaky but determined ink. The pages became a record not just of survival but of growth, proof that she was more than the sum of what had been done to her. The days passed in a rhythm of work, therapy, and preparation. Marian felt herself growing stronger, her voice less tentative, her back a little straighter. She watched other women come and go, some returning to families, some starting over in new cities, each carrying her own invisible scars. There was comfort in their shared struggle, a solidarity she had never known before. One golden afternoon, Gwen sat with Marian in the shelter's garden, listening as she delivered her speech for the 10th, then the 20th time. The sun warmed Marian's face, and for the first time she heard herself not as a victim, but as a witness, someone whose truth could no longer be dismissed. Gwen squeezed her hand. "This is your story now, Marian. Own every chapter. You're ready." Marian nodded, feeling the truth settle in her bones. She was ready. She would not beg for understanding or plead for mercy. She would confront Paige and Jordan with the truth, her husband's words, and the strength she'd found in her darkest moments. But fate had its own plans. That evening, Nadine burst into the common room, phone pressed to her ear, her face drawn with concern. "Marian, you need to come with me." Confused, Marian followed her to the office. Nadine closed the door behind them, lowering her voice. "The police are looking for you. Paige has reported you missing and claimed you stole valuables from the house." The room spun. Marian gripped the edge of the desk. "That's a lie. She's trying to ruin me." Nadine nodded. "We know. But she's made an official report. The police want to talk to you. This doesn't mean you're guilty, but you have to be careful now. Do you want Aaron to be present?" Marian's breath came fast and shallow, old panic threatening to drag her under. "She always finds a way," she whispered, "no matter what I do." Nadine placed a steadying hand on her arm. "Not this time. You have us. You have evidence. And you have a plan. You don't have to run." Marian pressed her lips together, willing herself not to cry. "She's scared. She knows I have something. That's why she's doing this." "That's right," Nadine said. "And that means you're closer than you think." Ruth arrived soon after, concern etched deep in her face. Marian recounted everything. Her plan, Paige's accusations, the growing sense that everything was converging on a single moment of truth. "Let them come," Ruth said fiercely. "You're not that frightened woman anymore. You have people. You have power." The following morning, Marian met with Aaron and a police officer at the shelter. The conversation was tense but professional. Aaron presented the trust documents, the letter, and explained the circumstances of Marian's departure. The officer seemed relieved by the clarity. "This matches what we've heard from your social worker. We just needed your side." Afterwards, Marian slumped in relief. Gwen found her in the garden, where Marian sat with her notes crumpled in her hands. "You did everything right," Gwen said. "You can still do this. The truth is your ally." Marian took a deep breath, feeling the steady beat of hope beneath the anxiety. She rose, smoothing her skirt, her voice finding new strength. She would confront Paige and Jordan, not as someone to be pitied or feared, but as a woman finally awake to her own worth. She would fight for her home, her dignity, and her right to be believed. That night, Ruth, Gwen, and Nadine gathered in the common room, forming a small circle of support. Marian stood before them, voice clear and strong, rehearsing her speech one last time. "This is your story now, Marian," Gwen reminded her softly. "Own every chapter." For the first time, Marian smiled, not with apology or regret, but with the calm certainty of someone who finally knew her own power. Tomorrow, she would speak her truth. No matter what Paige did next, Marian was ready. Marian sat in the small, sunlit office at the shelter, the phone resting on the desk before her. Her hands no longer trembled. Gwen and Nadine sat nearby, silent but steadfast, Ruth standing just outside the door, a watchful guardian, fierce and loyal. Marian's speech was folded on her lap, worn soft from rehearsals, but she knew every word by heart. She stared at the phone, gathering her courage. This was the moment, the point of no return. Her husband's letter and Aaron's reassurances echoed in her mind. "This is your story now. Own every chapter." She dialed, her heart a slow, measured drumbeat in her chest. Across the city, in the kitchen Marian once called her own, Jordan answered on the second ring. His voice was clipped, impatient, as if already bracing for inconvenience. "Hello?" Marian steadied herself, pressing the phone to her ear. "Jordan, put Paige on. This concerns both of you." There was a long, uncomfortable silence. She could almost see Jordan's brow furrowing, the tension in his jaw. "Marian?" he said warily. "Where are you? Why are you calling from a strange number?" "Put her on, Jordan. You'll want her to hear this." Marian's tone was cool, resolute. She heard the muffled scrape of a chair, quick footsteps, a door closing. Then Paige's voice, sharp and bristling. "You have a lot of nerve. The police are looking for you. Where's my jewelry, Marian?" Marian didn't flinch. "Your jewelry is exactly where you left it. I haven't taken a thing." She paused, letting the silence build. "But I know what you have taken, or tried to. My life, my dignity, and you nearly succeeded." The line crackled with tension. In the kitchen, Jordan stood by the counter, clutching his phone, while Paige hovered beside him, her eyes wide with the first flicker of panic. Upstairs, Wyatt paused on the landing, drawn by the rising storm in his parents' voices. Marian continued, her voice unwavering. "I know about the letters you wrote, Paige, the conversations you recorded. I know about the lawyers you spoke to, those you tried to bribe into declaring me incompetent." Paige's breath caught. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I know everything," Marian pressed. "And more importantly, I have proof. My husband left me a recording. He warned me about you, Paige, about your plan to steal the house, to push me aside, to take everything. He protected me, just as I always protected this family." Jordan's voice wavered, a fragile mask of authority slipping. "Marian, slow down. If you needed help, you should have said something. No one's trying to hurt you." "Don't," Marian interrupted, her tone cold as glass. "Don't twist this. You stood by and let her humiliate me. You let her convince you I was helpless, a burden. You never once asked what I wanted or what I knew." Wyatt crept closer, listening, eyes wide with disbelief. Paige's voice sharpened, frantic now. "You're lying, you're delusional. You ran away because you couldn't face the truth." Marian took a breath, centering herself in the shelter's soft light. "The truth is, you waited for me to fall, but I was stronger than you thought. I found help. I found allies. And I have legal documents, signed by my husband and witnessed by his lawyer, that put everything in my name, the house, the trust, everything you schemed to take from me." The silence was absolute, a vacuum in the center of their world. Paige, usually so quick to recover, was speechless. Jordan tried to regain control, his voice unsteady. "If this is true, then, Marian, we need to talk face to face. We can work something out. You know you can't trust—" "I trust myself," Marian replied, a new strength in her words. "For the first time in years. I trusted you both, and you failed me. I don't owe you anything, not explanations, not forgiveness." In the kitchen, Paige pressed her hands to her face, the color draining from her cheeks. Wyatt, silent on the stairs, understood suddenly what had been happening, the gaslighting, the slow erasure of his grandmother. He stepped back into the shadows, shame tightening in his chest. Jordan scrambled, his tone wheedling. "You can't just cut us out, Marian. Family means something." "Family means truth," Marian said, "and you abandoned that long ago. I won't be bullied into silence anymore." Gwen watched Marian, pride shining in her eyes. Nadine took notes, preparing for whatever might follow. Marian felt the circle of support around her, the women who had listened, guided, and believed her when her own family would not. Paige's composure shattered. "What do you want?" she spat, voice trembling. Marian's voice was steady, unyielding. "I want what's mine. I want peace. And I want you both to know. I will not be erased. If you fight me, I'll go to the authorities. I have everything I need to prove your scheme and to make sure you never do this to anyone else." The silence on the line was an answer in itself, a surrender dressed up as shock. Marian let it linger, watching the sunlight dance across the shelter's faded carpet. "I'll have my lawyer contact you," she said quietly. "From now on, you speak to him, not to me. I have no more to say to you." On the other end, Paige's breathing was ragged, panic giving way to fury. Jordan, at last, seemed to understand the reality they now faced. Wyatt listened, heart pounding, and wondered how it had come to this, how cruelty and greed had hollowed out their home. He longed to run down the stairs, to apologize, to beg Marian to come back. But he knew it was too late. Marian ended the call. She closed her eyes, letting the silence fill her. When she opened them again, Gwen was smiling through tears. "You did it, Marian." "I did," Marian whispered, voice full of something new, pride, certainty, peace. "I really did." The day dawned with an uneasy hush. Marian woke at the shelter with a heart pounding, not from fear, but from anticipation. Today was the reckoning, the day her truth would step from shadow into light. As she dressed, Gwen pressed her hand, whispering, "You're ready." Nadine met her at the front door, car keys in hand, and a smile that promised she would not be alone. When they arrived at the house, the driveway was crowded, 2 police cruisers and Aaron's silver sedan side by side, lights quietly flashing. Marian walked up the path with her head held high, the folder of evidence pressed close to her chest. The front door stood open, tension leaking into the air like a storm about to break. Inside, the world she once called home was frozen mid-crisis. Paige paced the kitchen, her anger barely contained, while Jordan sat stiffly at the table, his face pale and drawn. Wyatt hovered by the stairs, eyes red-rimmed, clutching a frayed sleeve. Neighbors and family friends whispered in corners, uncertain and uneasy, gathered by the spectacle none of them had expected. A police officer greeted Marian at the door. His voice was calm, respectful. "Miss Clark, we'd like to hear your side of the story." He glanced at Aaron, who nodded reassuringly. Marian's hands shook, but she drew a slow breath and began. She laid out the documents, her husband's letter, the trust, the legal recordings, each piece a brick in the wall she was building between herself and the lies that had tried to bury her. Aaron spoke quietly, confirming every detail, guiding Marian through the process with the steadiness of a seasoned advocate. Paige tried to interrupt, her voice rising, but the police officer held up a hand. "Please, ma'am, let her finish." Marian continued, voice growing stronger with every word, until the entire room was listening. Family, friends, even Paige, who had finally stopped pacing and now stood ashen and silent. When Marian finished, Aaron placed the small recorder on the table. Her husband's voice filled the room, every word clear, deliberate, unmistakable. The accusations, the plans, the warnings. There was no longer anywhere for Paige to hide. For a moment, silence reigned, a silence thick with the weight of shattered illusions. Then the officer turned to Paige and Jordan, his tone neither harsh nor sympathetic, simply certain. "We have reviewed the evidence. There is no indication of theft, only a clear attempt at manipulation and fraud. Sometimes justice is quiet, but it changes everything." Paige's mask began to crumble. "This is a setup. She's sick. She's making it all up." She turned to the gathered friends, searching for a single ally, but found only uncertainty and disbelief. Jordan looked at the ground, shame radiating from every line of his body. Wyatt broke first. With a strangled sob, he rushed to Marian, throwing his arms around her waist. "I'm so sorry, Grandma. I didn't know. I didn't see." Marian hugged him fiercely, tears slipping down her cheeks, not from pain but from release. Neighbors exchanged murmurs, some embarrassed, others apologetic. Years of whispered rumors and half-truths now collapsed under the weight of Marian's courage. Paige, cornered and furious, shot daggers with her eyes but found no footing. Jordan finally looked up. His face was hollowed by guilt. "Marian," he said quietly, voice shaking. "I don't know how to say sorry for what I let happen. I thought I was helping. I didn't want to believe Paige was capable of—" He stopped, unable to finish. Marian met his gaze with sadness, not anger. "We all see what we want to see, Jordan. But you don't get to look away now." For a moment, Jordan seemed small, no longer the arbiter of the family, but a man lost in the ruins of his own denial. He nodded, tears bright in his eyes. The police officer took statements, gathering documents, making careful notes. "Miss Clark, if you wish to press charges for fraud or intimidation, we can begin the process," he said gently. "But regardless, the truth is clear here." Aaron stepped in, voice calm but resolute. "We will pursue every legal avenue. Marian's rights have been violated and the trust must be restored. There will be consequences, Paige. Paige's panic turned desperate. As the police officer gathered evidence, she darted upstairs, her movements frantic. Marian watched, a sick certainty growing in her chest. Moments later, a commotion sounded from above, the officer and a neighbor hurrying after her. Marian's heart pounded. Downstairs, Marian clung to Wyatt, waiting as the clock ticked loud in the quiet room. Then the officer reappeared, holding a USB stick aloft. "She was trying to destroy this," he said, face grim. "There's a camera in the study. Paige was caught attempting to alter or erase evidence." Paige, flanked by officers, was led down the stairs. She struggled, her fury now open and raw, her reputation dissolving in real time before the gathered witnesses. "You can't do this! You can't just erase me!" The officer's response was gentle, but final. "Sometimes justice is quiet, but it changes everything." Jordan slumped in his chair, hands over his face. The family was fractured, exposed. Some friends slipped away, unwilling to face the truth, while others quietly apologized to Marian. The support that Paige had counted on evaporated in the light of her own actions. Wyatt clung to Marian. "Don't leave again, Grandma, please." She stroked his hair, her own tears finally falling. "I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart. I promise." As officers escorted Paige from the house, Marian looked around at the remnants of her old life. There was no triumph, only sorrow, but also a release, a letting go of everything she had carried in silence for so long. Aaron stood by her side, a silent pillar, while Nadine and Gwen waited in the doorway, ready to usher Marian into a future of her own making. Neighbors watched as Paige was driven away, whispers drifting through the crowd. Wyatt stood beside Marian, not as a shield, but as a bridge, proof that even in the ruins of betrayal, there could be forgiveness and hope. The house was quieter now. Jordan sat alone, the enormity of his guilt and inaction settling in his bones. He looked at Marian, his voice nearly lost. "Can you ever forgive me?" Marian's answer was soft but true. "Forgiveness isn't something you ask for. It's something you earn." For the first time, Marian's story was her own, no longer hidden in shadow, no longer defined by shame. Justice had not come with noise or fury, but with truth. And in that truth, everything had changed. The courthouse was both imposing and liberating, a place of judgment, but also of possibility. Marian stood just outside its steps, Ruth and Gwen flanking her, their presence a shield of solidarity. The day was cool and bright, sunlight flashing on marble and glass. Marian's heart thudded with anticipation, but her hands were steady now, the folder of evidence secure in her grasp. Inside, the courtroom filled quickly. Friends, neighbors, Wyatt beside Nadine in the gallery, Jordan seated on the opposite bench with downcast eyes. Paige was absent, awaiting a separate hearing for her actions, her absence a silent admission of defeat. For the first time in months, Marian felt a gentle hush settle over her, as if the world itself recognized the weight of what was about to unfold. The hearing began with quiet formality. Aaron stood at Marian's side, presenting the evidence, the trust documents, her husband's voice recording, statements from the police and social worker. The judge, a middle-aged woman with clear, compassionate eyes, listened closely, her gaze never wavering from Marian's face. Aaron's voice was steady and respectful. "Your Honor, my client has endured not only fraud and coercion, but the slow erosion of her dignity at the hands of those closest to her. Today we ask not just for legal remedy, but for recognition of her courage in coming forward." Jordan was called to speak. He stood slowly, hands trembling, voice brittle with shame. "Your Honor, I let myself believe lies because it was easier than seeing the truth. Marian is not only my mother-in-law, she was the heart of our home, and I failed her. I failed my son. I am deeply sorry." The judge regarded him for a long, silent moment. "Acknowledging harm is the beginning, not the end," she said gently. "Ms. Clark, do you wish to speak?" Marian rose. She felt every eye in the courtroom, some familiar, some strangers, waiting. She glanced at Wyatt, at Ruth and Gwen, then looked directly at the judge. "I lost my home before I lost my house," she began, her voice clear, unwavering. "For years I let myself believe I deserved less kindness, less respect, less love, because that's what I was told. I believed my worth depended on how quietly I could serve others. But the truth is, silence is not strength, and dignity is not something anyone can give or take away. It's something you must claim for yourself. She paused, letting the words settle. I do not want vengeance. I do not wish for anyone to suffer as I did. But I do want justice. I want to break the chain of hurt, so that no one else, least of all my grandson, ever feels powerless in their own home. Gwen beamed from the gallery, tears shining in her eyes. Ruth squeezed Nadine's hand, pride etched across her face. The judge leaned forward, her voice ringing through the hushed courtroom. This isn't just about law, it's about healing and courage. Ms. Clark, your words honor the court and yourself. I find the evidence clear and convincing. The trust is valid, and all assets are to be restored to your sole control. Further, the court recognizes the pattern of manipulation and coercion you have survived. A ripple of relief and quiet applause spread through the gallery. Marian bowed her head, gratitude and disbelief mingling in her heart. Justice, she realized, could be quiet, but its impact was profound. The judge continued, as for future contact, Ms. Clark, the law is at your disposal. If you wish to set boundaries or limit communication, you are within your rights. Healing begins with self-protection. Marian nodded. She turned to Jordan, who was weeping openly now. Jordan, she said, her voice kind but firm, I accept your apology. But things will not go back to how they were. If you want a relationship with me or with Wyatt, it must be built on honesty and respect. I need time, and you need to do your own work. He nodded, unable to speak, but grateful for her candor. Thank you, Marian, he managed at last. Thank you for not giving up on us. The proceedings wrapped up with the official transfer of assets and a court order confirming Marian's authority over her property and affairs. Erin shook her hand, smiling for the first time in weeks. You did more than win a case. You reclaimed your life. Outside the courthouse, the autumn sun caught the red and gold of falling leaves. Marian stepped into the open air, Wyatt barreling toward her. He threw his arms around her waist, clinging as if he might never let go. I'm so proud of you, Grandma, he whispered, voice thick with emotion. I knew you'd come back. She knelt, holding him close, letting his forgiveness settle the last aches of her heart. I'll always come back for you, Wyatt. Always. Ruth and Gwen approached, whooping and clapping, drawing smiles from the strangers nearby. You did it, Marian, Ruth crowed. You broke the chain. Gwen hugged her tightly. I hope you know what you've done for all of us. For every woman who's ever felt small or unseen. This is your victory. Marian smiled, not with triumph, but with a quiet peace. It's all of ours. None of us did this alone. The three women stood together as Erin joined them, discussing plans for the next steps: security, self-care, new beginnings. Nadine snapped a photo of the group, immortalizing the moment for all the women who would come after. As the crowd dispersed, Jordan approached, tentative. If you're willing, I'd like to try again, to do better. Marian placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Trying is all we can do. But this time, I lead my life, and my story. The courthouse doors swung closed behind them. Marian glanced back one last time, then forward, where the path was uncertain, but finally, truly her own. Breaking the chain did not mean erasing the past. It meant building something better, out of truth and pain and hope. And for the first time, Marian felt the future, wide, welcoming, and hers to choose. Sunlight streamed through the windows of Marian's new house, painting golden patches on polished wood and walls hung with photos, some old, some joyously recent. The rooms hummed with the aromas of simmering stew, warm bread, and something sweet baking in the oven. The clink of dishes and the sound of laughter created a symphony Marian had almost forgotten, a music far richer than silence or sorrow. Her home, hers by right, by law, by long and costly courage, was not grand, but it was safe and bright, filled with touches of her own making. Soft quilts draped the couch, books lined every shelf. The kitchen windowsill overflowed with herbs she and Wyatt had planted together. For the first time in years, Marian felt the gentle certainty of belonging. Tonight she hosted those who had carried her through darkness into light. Ruth arrived first, arms full of flowers and her laugh echoing down the hall. Gwen followed, still in her therapist's cardigan, her eyes warm with pride. Wyatt came last, bearing a pie he'd made with Nadine at the shelter, his cheeks flushed with excitement. They gathered around the table, sharing food and stories, jokes and memories. Ruth told tales from her nursing days. Gwen teased Wyatt about his pie crust, and Marian let herself settle into the moment, no longer braced for hurt, no longer waiting for kindness to be taken away. After dinner, they moved to the living room. Marian watched Wyatt curled on the rug, his laughter bubbling up as Ruth recounted a story about sneaking snacks into hospital rooms. The air felt light, almost miraculous. Every corner of the house was alive with possibility, a testament to battles fought and won, not with anger, but with endurance and love. As twilight fell, Marian found herself looking at her husband's photo on the mantel. She touched the frame, tracing his smile with a fingertip. Grief was still there, but it had softened. No longer a jagged wound, but a quiet ache braided with gratitude. "I promised you I'd keep going," she whispered, "and I am." Wyatt's voice interrupted her thoughts. "Grandma? Can I help you make tea?" She smiled, her heart swelling. "Of course, love." In the kitchen, she watched him move, awkward and tall, trying so hard to do things right. When the tea was steeped and poured, Marian handed him a mug and drew him close. He looked at her, serious and intent. "Are you happy now?" he asked. The question struck deep. Marian thought of the nights spent alone in her car, the days in the shelter, the fear and shame she'd carried. She thought of Ruth's soup by the river, Gwen's steady listening, Nadine's fierce advocacy. She remembered the courtroom, her speech, the relief of truth spoken aloud. And she thought of this house, warm, bright, her own. She knelt beside Wyatt, searching for words that mattered. "I am," she said. "But happiness isn't just something you find. You have to fight for it and choose it every day. And sometimes you need others to help you remember how." He nodded, nestling into her side. "I'm glad you chose me." Marian smiled through tears. "Family is who stands with you, not against you." The words hung in the air, resonant and true, knitting together everything she'd learned on her journey. As the evening wore on, Marian led her guests into a cozy den, where a group photo hung beside the window. Her, Ruth, Gwen, Nadine, and Wyatt, all arms and laughter and bright eyes. It was a picture she would never have imagined. A family she'd made from courage and kindness rather than blood or duty. Ruth caught her gaze and winked. "You know, Marian, you could run a shelter out of this place. You've got the heart for it." Gwen agreed, nodding. "You already do, in a way. The women at the shelter still talk about you. They say you gave them hope." Marian felt a flush of pride, unexpected and sweet. "I only did what others did for me. I listened. I believed them. Sometimes that's all it takes." Her new home became a place of gentle revolution. Every Thursday, Marian volunteered at the shelter, mentoring women who'd lost their way, just as she once had. She shared not just advice, but her story. Every hard truth, every small triumph. She helped them fill out paperwork, write their own speeches, and rehearse their hopes for the future. Ruth joined in, teaching first aid and survival skills. Gwen led group therapy in Marian's sun-filled living room, helping women stitch their lives back together, one word at a time. The work was slow, sometimes heartbreaking, but Marian saw herself in every woman who arrived broken and left with her head a little higher. She felt the chain truly break, not just for herself, but for others, as cycles of silence gave way to courage, and old wounds began to heal. One night, after a support group, Marian sat quietly by her window, looking out over the little garden Wyatt had helped her plant. The air was soft with summer. Ruth and Gwen were laughing in the kitchen, Wyatt's laughter echoing from the porch. The house felt full, of voices, of possibility, of love. Marian looked once more at her husband's photo, her voice gentle and sure. "Thank you," she said, "for loving me enough to help me start again. I promise I'll keep moving forward." And as laughter spilled through the bright, safe rooms, Marian knew she had reclaimed not only her home, but herself. The family she had lost was not gone, but transformed, rebuilt from the ashes of old pain into something new, something chosen, something stronger than blood. In this new beginning, Marian was not just a survivor, but a builder of hope, her own, and for every woman who followed. What would you do if the people you loved most tried to erase your voice? If Marian's story moved you, share it with someone who needs hope and help us spark a conversation about family, healing, and the courage to start over. Every story has the power to break a cycle. Will you be the reason someone finds their strength? Because sometimes the bravest thing we do is believe a survivor.